Hello and welcome everybody to Chapter 7. Yes, we're working on Phillip yet again, but we're going to be working on a lot of different things. You can see from this particular image, we're going to be working with text, we're going to transform, we're going to align things. So let's get started. Let me get rid of Phillip here, and this should be getting to look very familiar to you. But you know what? In Photoshop, it's all about the practice. And we need to cut him out again from the background, and by now we should be picking up speed on how to do that. So we just use the quick selection tool or press the letter W, and we just paint away. Make sure your brush is a fairly decent size. It doesn't have to be gigantic. And I went too far, so I hold down the Alt Option key on a Mac and just drag that inward and make sure we get everything. Let's see, let's zoom in. So I'm going to this time use the zoom tool and just come in that way. Part of his eyebrow isn't in here, so I'm going to turn that back on, make my brush smaller with the left bracket key. Get that right over here on the hair on the right side. He needs all the hair. Let's go down to where that was a little bit troubling a while ago. And now the Alt key, Option key on a Mac. Good to there, there, all around there. Alright, so now we do the Refine Edge. And you notice there's some jaggies there, so the first thing we're going to do is smooth it a little. And then we're going to switch this to black, see what it looks like. So we have a little white fringing on the hair. So if we put this in a dark background, that's going to show. So what we'll do is just drag this shift edge to the left until it comes down. Maybe just a tiny, tiny bit of feathering. And then I'm holding down the space bar to use the grabber hand and just look at the rest of the image. Make sure it looks okay. Got a little issue right here, so I just kind of paint with that paintbrush. You just let go and paint a little bit for that to make a little better selection. Now let's switch this back to white. Looks good there. And looks pretty good all over. I can switch this back to black and paint up there also. But then you go back over to white and we see a little bit of the hair went away. So we can go right here, hold this down, and click on the Erase Refinement tool and just go right back over that. And now if we switch it back to black, it's in good shape. Alright, so now we can go down here to the bottom, and I always click on Decontaminate Colors, and then I want to, and just use the default 50, and I want a layer mask, and just click OK. So now Phillip has a little layer mask you see over here in the panels, and what we're going to do is just click on that, and then right click and go down to where it says Apply Layer Mask, and then it's on its own layer, which is what we want. Now we're going to bring in another image, and this one's entitled Brick Wall, and we've got a door. That made it too long of a title. So what we're going to do is just select this brick area and the door and this edge of the brick over here as well. So let's click on the crop tool. We're going to do a couple of things here. We're going to bring this in to the edge. Just kind of line it up. You only want to see brick in here. And we can bring that over. And I don't want that electrical box that's up there. And now I'm going to click on Straighten, because this is out of alignment. And then we just hit Enter. And looks pretty good. So I'm going to just click the Move tool to complete that. I'm going to do a Control A, Control C, go back over to Phil's guns, and do a Control V as in paste. If this comes up on yours, just click OK. We don't care about that. Now, this is so much bigger than the image of Philip. What we need to do is hold down your Control Command on a Macintosh and hit the minus key and make that thing small. Now let's do a Control T and hold down the Shift key and drag this corner about to where it lines up, and then you can just let go of the Shift key and bring that over to where it snaps there to the edge. Hit Enter. Now let's make it big again. So let's just do a Control or Command on a Mac plus, and now let's just put, let me do a Control minus. Let's put this layer, layer 1, underneath Phillip. So we just click and drag it underneath, and we've got our background. Now, a couple of things real quick. We're going to actually flip Phillip, but before we do, let's make a copy of him. So we highlight the Phillip layer and do a Control J. And on this top layer, we're just going to go to normal, where it says normal, these are the blend modes, and go down to multiply. And it turns Phillip fairly dark. That's okay. We also want to put a mask on it. So we go right down here to the little square donut and put that mask on. Turn on a paintbrush. Put it about 50%, 45 is okay. Click on a brush up here at the top. Make sure it's nice and soft, and we want it pretty good size. Come to the image, let's make it a little bit bigger with the right bracket key, and just paint over it a couple of times like that, and over the hands. And see what we're doing over here in the mask. We're putting a little gray in there. We can keep clicking till we light his face up a whole lot more if we want to. We're painting, my problem is I didn't press D and get the default white, so it's painting with gray. Let's switch that to X, and now that lightened it up a little bit better, a little bit more on the hands. So we've got the contrast on Phillip looking pretty good. I'm going to take and sandwich these two together by pressing Control E, and now they're one layer. That's all there is to it now. Now we're going to do the same thing with the background layer. So do a Control J, and now we've got two background copies, and we're going to go to normal, multiply, because we want that background to be quite a bit darker. All right, we're going to keep this probably about that dark. We can also change the opacity if we want to lighten the background up just a little bit. Totally your call. But I don't want the doorway to be black. So see, it's just jet black right now for the most part. So again, I'm going to create a little layer mask. So click on the square donut. And we're going to, this time, click up here on the rectangular marquee tool. And let's turn Phillip off for just a minute so we can better see this. Let's make sure we got all of the door in the shot when we did. Okay, now we're okay. Let's just make a selection out of that black. I didn't get it all just perfectly, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. So now I'm going to fill this with a lighter gray color, which will show up over here. So I go over to the color picker, click on that, and I want something up in here. It's a light gray, as you can see. Click OK. And now we're going to fill this layer mask. Make sure you're not on this. You want to be clicked and highlighted on the mask. And we're going to fill with this top gray color. And we do that by holding down the Alt, that's Option key on a Mac, and press the backspace key. And notice it put a little gray triangle in here. And we could make it lighter if we want to by making this darker. I know that sounds backwards, but let's click on this again and let's get a darker gray. Click OK, and now Alt or Option on a Mac, backspace, and see the door is lighter now. And you look at our mask over here. So let's click Control D, Command D on a Mac, to turn off the marching ants. And here's what we got. I'm going to do a Control 0 or Command 0 on a Mac to fill the screen up with our image. Everything looks pretty good around the door. We've highlighted it. It looks okay. If you have any edges that are too far, we just turn on a paintbrush and we can paint. Let me make sure we're in the mask. And let's change the hardness all the way up. And we can paint and see the mask is changing, so it's going back to black. So let me undo those, and I'm going to just go around this edge, make sure I haven't overpainted, and see I'm making this other, because I'm painting outside that gray area now. So I gotta switch back to black. Masks are just fantastic. So I went around this edge and I darkened some of this, and I really don't want to, so I'm going to Control Z, Control Z. Well, let's undo part of that. And I'm going to paint with white, so I press X to switch the colors. And now I'm bringing that part of the door back out some more. Okay, there's a little bit of a shadow on the door to begin with, if you remember. Let me show you. I'll disable that layer mask. And see, it's lighter right here than it is anywhere else. So I'll enable that again. So we're looking pretty good. Let's bring Phillip back. And what we want to do is actually flip Phillip the other direction, because we're going to make this into a magazine cover. And right now, this is, if you look at a magazine, where's the text? Well, it's across the top and usually down the right-hand side where the binder is. So let's do a Control T. And just move your mouse inside the bounding box, and that's what they call any one of these boxes that has the control keys on it. Right-click inside there and go down here to where it says Flip Horizontal. And that just turns Phillip the other way. Now, where this really crosses you up is if somebody's wearing a shirt with writing on it, then it becomes backwards. So now let's grab this top handlebar, hold down the Shift key, and drag it down, because we don't want him taller than the door is. Otherwise, he's a giant trying to go in a door. So now that we've got it about the right size, we can just hit Enter, and the transform is complete. Now it's a good time to look at Phillip, because now he's on a dark background for real, and I see some white highlights, and we don't want that around there. So we can either take the time to erase that, or do one of my favorites, hold down your Control key and click on the icon over here in the panels, in the layer panel, Command or Control click it, and that turns on the marching ants. Then we go to, and I'm going to hide that so I can see the white edge. I'm going to do a Control or Command H, and now the marching ants are still there, they're just hidden. So I'm going to go to Select, Modify, Contract, and let's try 2 pixels. Click OK, and what we want to do, it looks like 2 pixels really came in quite a ways. So I'm going to do a Control D to undo that. Alright, let's Control or Command Shift, or sorry, Control click on this icon, or Command click it on Macintosh. Go to Select, Modify, Contract by 1. And the marching ants moved in just a little bitty bit. Let me do a Control H. You see the white line. I need to go in and select inverse. So I'm turning the selection around. Now everything, let me zoom out, see, everything but Phillip is now selected. So now if we hit delete on our keyboard or backspace, and let's do the Control D, it got rid of our white halo around everything. That's really comes in handy. All right, sometimes it takes 2 pixels to really get it good, but that did a nice job for us. I'm going to do a Control minus, Command minus on a Macintosh. All right, let's switch over here to the background, turn Phillip off, just click that eyeball off to get Phillip off the top for now, because we want to work on the background. If you're satisfied with the background that dark, I actually think that I took mine probably up higher than that. As a matter of fact, I'm positive that I did. And we really, once we're satisfied with the lighting and everything on the image, we don't need to keep this layer either, like we did on Phillip. If I paint with my brush, I just want to make sure, paint on this, I want to make sure I've got everything as dark as I want it. And I just painted 100%, which never a good way to paint. Now, just try to bring back anything that's along the edge. I don't want it to, that looks good enough. So I'm going to collapse this layer, or merge this layer with layer 1. So we only have one background copy. So hold down your Control key or Command key on a Mac and hit the letter E as in echo. And now we've just got the single layer that Phillip is on. Okay? Now, if I click Phillip back off again, you notice it says 20 East Pearson. Well, this is a photograph that I took in Chicago, and I just zoomed in. Just use this tool if you wish, and get it fairly large. This was on a side street in Chicago, and it just had a friend of mine's name on it, so I photographed it. Little did I think about it being a background for an image, but you never know. That's why you got to take a lot of pictures if you're a photographer. Let's click on the spot healing brush and come over here and just paint right over the top of the address. Let go, and that's gone. That's good. I just love that tool. It's worth its weight in gold. So let's just click here with the text tool selected. I'm just going to click right in here and put rear entrance. And you can use whatever font you want. I like Arial for a lot of things. Just move that up. And this makes your transforms a lot cleaner. And click on the Move tool or the check mark up here. And then we just need to click on the Move tool and make sure we got the right tools going on here. I accidentally hit the wrong little button. So now with the Move tool, and I'm going to do a Control T, Command T on a Mac and drag that up a little bit. And let's do something a little bit different here. Now we can't really manipulate this as much as we'd like to. I'm holding down the Control key. If you go in here, you can warp and skew. So I'm going to try to skew this just a little bit. See, that really won't work for me. What I want to do is make this a little bit smaller going away, bringing some depth to it. So here's what we do. We go over to the Layers palette. Let me just hit Enter here. And right click and go to where it says Rasterize. Now, with this not being a text anymore, it's not a vector graphic, it's now a raster graphic. So we can do a Control T again, hold down the Control key, and move each handlebar independently of the other. And then if I hit Enter, it's going away a little bit. Maybe too much, but we're going to say it's fine for the sake of time. It's your call how you do that. If this door was open slightly, this would be perfect. Okay, so we turn Phillip back on. Let's move him over to the left just a smidgen, so we have to be on the right layer. And move tool on. Just move him a little bit over here. We don't need to see the entire word. Our brain fills in the blanks for us very easily. And sometimes it's just a whole lot more effective when we do that. Just don't show them everything. There's no reason to move him over there where it says rear entrance. Just give them enough to let the brain fill that in. People will know what it is. Okay, here's what we need to do. That rear entrance does not look real, being that white. So let's change the opacity of that. Get on the rear entrance and just drop that down till you're happy. And then go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And you just make that ever so small. Let's just type a 1 in. Now let's go and blow that up. So let's just see that put just a little bit of a blur on it. Let's try taking this down even further. Right in there is okay. Now, if we want to run that filter again, we don't have to go back up to Filter, Blur, and more Gaussian Blur. You can simply, if you look up here at the top, use Control F. So if we do Control F 2 or 3 times, that blurs, and at that distance or at that magnification, that may be too much. So we'll do a Control Alt Z, Command Option Z on a Mac, and come back a couple. That looks fine. So Control or Command minus, and Control plus, Command plus on a Mac. Let's do one other thing real quick. There's really no sense in having this rear entrance text file right here just floating off by itself. It's taking up space. So let's do a Control or Command on a Mac. E is an echo, and that will merge the rear entrance text down to layer 1. Should. And there we go. Now it's all part of layer 1. And let's go up here to the layer with Phillip on it. Let's just double click that, click on it, and put fill in there so we don't have to guess what's on our layers. And we'll put background on this one. If you're working for somebody and they come in and want to know what's going on, they really expect you to have your layers named, and it's a good idea for all of us. But one thing that we didn't do is create a little depth to Phillip by putting a drop shadow on. Now, you're not going to be able to see it when I click on the little special effects, but I'm going down to where it says drop shadow, and I'm getting this. And I can just, let's make Phillip a little bit bigger. I'm holding down the Control key, that'd be the Command key on a Mac, and pressing the space bar at the same time, and left clicking on the mouse. And right now I can click and drag, and you see a shadow already there. Now we want this shadow to be very small and not really noticeable. So we're going to drop the opacity down, and the size, we can bring that out a little bit, but not very much. Watch those edges and click OK. Now Control minus or Command minus on a Mac, you don't even really notice the drop shadow. It's there, and it's causing him to be a little more rounded, so to speak, in the image. There's a little tiny distance between him and the wall. Otherwise, if you eliminate a drop shadow, oftentimes you will make it look like it's just plastered right against the background. And notice right now, he does not look plastered. It really looks like back here there is separation between he and this wall, and they were never in the same place that I know of. I'm sure he wasn't on that street in Chicago where I was. Normal human beings don't go there. I'm kidding. It was a great street to be on. My wife and I toured through there and had a great time with the camera. So we need to go up here and add some text. This is supposed to be a magazine, so let's put some text in. And we want to add the dancing nightlife. So let's click on the text tool or press the letter T, and let's just click out an area here that we want to put it in. And the dancing, I'm going to hit enter, night life. There's not a lot of space between these two, so I'm going to click and drag. You never know. It depends on what was last used. Let me change the color of that so you can see it better for now. So that's the way it looks right now. I want to separate this text a little bit. I don't want them overlapping. So if I click and drag to select it, right here, this little tab is a panel that will come in handy in so many circumstances. Just click it. It's the character and paragraph panel, and you can see right here the little A on top of another A, and it's defaulting or going to 27.78 points, and our font is over 30. So that's why it's all running together. A lot of times you can just put it on automatic and it will separate very nicely for you. If you want to crowd it a little bit, you can fine tune it. Obviously too close. That's closer, and you can also type in here. Put a 2 in there. So now we can condense that, or actually go ahead with the font and commit the text to the changes that we made. So now we have the dancing nightlife. I don't like the color white. It doesn't look good here. We actually, and I'm not a graphic design artist, so I don't have any, much training in graphics design work. I'm a photographer and digital artist, but graphics design is not one of my things. But I know I don't like this color for this image. So I'm going to go over to the layers panel and double click right on the T with my mouse. And I'm going to go up here and click on the color picker for text. And what I'm going to do, instead of just picking a color out of here, I'm going to come down into the image and sample. So I can just bring my mouse out of the box and come down here and click on a shirt. I can move this out of the way, click on a brick. There aren't a lot of different colors. This really works great if you have an image that has lots of different colors in it. Click on his ear. And I'm going to click on a red like this, and I'm going to go really bounce it up a little bit. I want it to really pop out like a nightlife thing going on. And now I think my text is a little bit too close again. So I'm going to click OK here, and I'm going to separate those a little bit more. Let's try 34. Type in a 4. Commit. Still a little crowded, but I can live with that for the most part. I can also, at this point, I'm going to make it bigger to fill that space a little better. So double click on the T again, and I'm just going to go up here and let's try a 48. Now that's going to change how close these are again. So I could go over here and change that to auto, and now let's go to 48 and commit. Let's click on the actual commit button. So here we've got a decent looking font with a neat looking color. Really jumps out there. But there's all kinds of things that we can also do to it to make it even better. Now remember, we can line this text up, and probably should. We're not going to be in the center for the most part. So what we can do is, with this highlighted, go down to the background again, and we want to control click it, make sure nothing else is selected, and then we can go up here and click on this and click on centering, and then hold down the shift key, control Z that. We've got to click on just the dancing. We don't want to move the background too. So just click again on the dancing nightlife. Now shift click and drag it down. So the dancing nightlife. The reason I made such a long title, I'm sure that there's something called the Nightlife or Nightlife magazine. So I just went with the dancing nightlife. Probably aren't too many magazines with that name. Hopefully I'm safe. Now if I want to make it, bigger, control T, and I can drag these edges out, and I can squatty it up a little bit. So totally your call. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to actually control click it, control T it to make it a little bit bigger, but I don't want to make it more squatty. If anything, I would probably click it and once again change the spacing. Let's make that a 40. Try that. Not enough. Let's try 50. That's fine. Commit. Yeah, that works. Alrighty. Let's see if we can't bring that to life a little bit better. Let's get that back there. Going to the special effects, clicking on it, and I'm going to just click on the words blending options. So I want to bring up the whole dialog box and let you see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put a little bit of a stroke on this text to separate it from the background. So I can just, and again, this is a great place for you to experiment. So you see immediately I've got a stroke around there, and if I make that bigger, you can more easily see the stroke. A lot of times, if we click right on the word stroke, we can actually control what color the stroke gets. All of these colors are viable. In this case, black is what I want to use. And then we can control how big that stroke is. 12 is pretty big. So let's try a 4. Like that a little bit more. I don't want it to be about the black. Alright, let's try, actually I need to go back there, so I'm going to double click right on the effects, bring this dialog back. I wasn't done. I'm going to fancy it up a little bit more. Clicking on the bevel and emboss. I'm going to go to chisel hard, and I'm going to go down here to the gloss contours and just experiment with these, see what I can get. Also, changing the depth can really make a neat effect. You just have to look at each one and see the kind of effect that they have on the image. Some are much better than others, obviously. And you're the person that has to determine. I like a little highlight in there. Adds a little sophistication to it. So let's just say that's fine. And click OK. Let's do a Control 0 to fill the screen. Command 0 on a Macintosh. Now, we need to build some text going down in the image, or down the right side of the image, as there would be in a magazine. So let's set up some guides in here to work with. Now, if you don't see your ruler going around the top and the left side, just hold down your Control key and press the letter R, and that will bring them up for you. Command R on a Macintosh. What I'm going to do is bring out a guide, just click and drag it for the right side, and I want all my text to be on this right side of this guide. And we can also set a top one and say I don't want anything above that. So my space is basically going to be excuse me, right in here. I don't want to take it all the way to the edge. Now if it starts snapping to the edge and you can't control that very well, when you're dragging it, then move your finger to the control key and hold it down, and it'll let you put it precisely where you want it. Then let go. So this is going to be our text area right in here. So let's click on the text tool or press the letter T, come over here and just click once, and obviously this is going to be huge. The flashing cursor shows you that. Look up here. Yes, it's going to be 48. Let's change that to 12 and try again. Making a good impression. Well, that's too long for that space, right? So that's not the way to go, and that's not the right font. I'm going to copy that text so I don't have to put it in again, and I'm just going to come over here and highlight the layer that I just made and hit the trash can right down here in the bottom right. Make that go away. I'm going to go back to the text tool and click and drag inside that guide area. So now I can make sure that I'm only going to type within that box. Again, the type font went right back to 48. I'm going to go right back to putting 12 in. So now when I type, I'm just going to do a Control V, and that'll go ahead and put that text in for me. And notice it also used my spacing and everything for the previous. So I'm going to click and select all that, and I want to change this back. I'm just going to use Arial and go to my spacing up here in that control panel, and I'm just going to set that to automatic. And now you can see it's pretty close together. Again, I can click on paragraph and say I want this left justified. Totally up to you how you want it set up. Click on the confirm button or on the move tool, and there's our first text. So let's once again come down here. I don't want to use red over here again, but let's just go up here, and for now we'll make it white. Alright, we'll commit that, and we'll go back to the text tool and click and drag. And actually I could go ahead and type lots of text in this first one, but I can't control them individually if I want to do that. Not as well. Not really at all in some circumstances. So let's add some more text. Let's put in, don't know what happened to my box, taming bouncers. Because if you ever run up against a tough bouncer trying to get in, might not get in the door, front or back. Let's add some more. Turn on the type tool. Click and drag. What? Oops. To expect once inside. And notice everything now is typing left justified, so that little automatic part really helps. So let's commit, and more text. Click and drag a selection. Should you blend in or stand out. And just raise this up. You don't want them to overlap. That's the big part about grabbing that bottom of the box and bringing it up. I'll commit that. Let's get some more text down. Using credit cards. Commit. Now I added some text down here at the bottom. My text is really too big for this image. I didn't even notice that until I went to put this paragraph in. So I'm going to quickly change the font sizes on all this. So let me do that and I'll be right back. I'm simply going to go in to the image themselves, double click on the T's and change the font size right here. And notice it will pop back where you need it to go over to the left side. And I'll just change those and be right back. So I went in and I put this text down at the bottom. I changed all of these to 9 point instead of, I think I had them at 12. I went in and changed them to 8. That was too small, so I went back and changed them all to 9. And the quickest way, notice we can't see very many layers over here. 2 actually in the layers panel. And normally I have much more space to work in, but the recording space only allows me to see what you see here. So what I'm doing is holding down the control key and clicking on a layer. It takes me right to the one I need. Then I double click it, come up here and change the font. I commit and then I control click on another one. Now these look a little bit smaller, but they shouldn't be. Let's see. I'm control clicking on what to expect once inside. Double click. Yep, it's smaller. So 9, commit. And let's try taming bouncers. So I control click on that. There it is. It's 9. Click on commit. Control click on making a good impression. Double click there, and then it's 9. So, and I added this down there, special. You know, this is their big special. Gaining access to the backstage is something treasured by young dancers. We tell you all the great ways to get the special pass and have a leg up on the competition. Pun intended. Leg up, dancing, so forth. Okay. Now there's a couple of ways to get rid of these guides. We can go to view and click on extras to uncheck everything. Or we can go back to view, and this is kind of the long way to go. Make sure the move tool is on, and notice once we get close to one of those guides, it turns into a split line, which allows us to drag them back in, or you can just throw them away. Just drag them completely off. So if I have one set here, I can just click and drag it all the way to the right and it goes away. So that gets rid of those guides, and we've got our text in our image, at least this text. We're going to put some more text in on Philip's mouth. We'll come back to this text in a few minutes if we want to doctor it all up, but spacing is important. Another thing I want to point out, like I said, I'm not a graphics designer, but I do know, unless you have really good reason, you don't use more than 2 font types in a piece of work. Notice we have this script up here, the script text, and then we have this Arial here, and that's pretty much it. That background here, the rear entrance, is also Arial. So unless you have a very good reason for using a different kind of font inside an image, just don't do it. It's problematic. So we're going to add text a little bit differently now. I need a little bit more room in here by Philip's face, because we're going to put some text like there are words coming out of his mouth. So let's control click on Philip. So it'll bring up the Philip layer. And with the move tool on, I'm going to hold down my shift key and move him over a little bit. And now what we're going to do is, you know, one thing that's kind of bothering me is the fact that the rear entrance is kind of fighting us on the text that's right here. And I was going to come back to this, but let's fix that right now. Let's go behind that text and all of it. Let's go right here above fill and click on the new layer icon. So let's, on that new layer, let's go up and click on the rectangular marquee, and let's set this at about, let's say a 5. So this is going to feather this selection. So I'm just going to click and drag around that. And now I'm going to fill it with black. If black and white aren't there, just press D on your keyboard. And if white's on top, press the letter X, and then you'll get black on top. So I'm going to fill this box in the layers panel with black. So I'm going to do Alt, backspace. That's Option, backspace on a Mac. Now, that's pretty harsh. Don't worry about it. I'm going to do a Control D. We're going to blur that just a little bit. So Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Let's look at these edges. I'm going to hold down my Control key, Command on a Mac, my space bar, click and drag. I want to see the edges. Now you see how feathered it is. And there's feathered a little bit more. So let's back up. And I'm going to drop the opacity and find a happy medium in there. We have a little separation. That helps. From the background, we still see the entrance. It's not fighting for attention like it was. Okay? So now, let's go up to the top, click on the very top layer, and click on the new layer icon. We're going to add some more text. So we're not going to really use that. We're just using that as a spacer. We're going to actually click on, right over here, the pen tool. So click that, and we want the very top one. And I'm just going to click once and come over here straight away from it, hold down the Shift key, and click again. That's all there is to it. Now I'm going to go over here to the text tool, and notice it turns into a slanted text tool. So I can type on that line. But first, before I do, actually I don't need that little box. Let's just delete that thing. And let's go over to the pen tool again. I'm going to click right here close to his mouth and hold down the Shift key, come out here to the right side, and click again. Now, select the text tool and start typing. Ready to dance. And notice it didn't include the other. So let's go down here to the Path Selection tool, and I'm just going to Control click to extend that line just a little bit. Don't need quite that much, so let's Control click to go back. A little bit more. Don't worry if it does that, just Control Z it and it'll get back to being on top. Sometimes it will want to flip over the line. Alright, so now we have a Ready to Dance line over here, or layer. And we just hit the Commit tool. And what I'm going to do now, click on another layer if it seems to lock, then click back on Ready to Dance layer, and you should have this. Now we're double clicking on the T, going up here to the T that's up at the top. This is the Warp Text tool. So we can click on that, and we get all of these options in the drop down. And what I'm looking for is this flag wave. There's lots of things that we can do, but I want to use the flag. And you can control how much the flag actually bends or waves, and click OK and do a commit. Now, with that selected, we can just, make sure you're on the Ready to Dance layer, hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, click and drag. That gives us a brand new layer. And do it one more time. Hold down the Alt key or Option key on a Mac, click and drag. So we get 3 different ones. They're all editable, remember, so we can put different text on each one of these lines. So let's double click this one, for example, and say get ready. Couple of exclamation points. Commit. Double click on the T here to select that, and we can put in let's just dance, exclamation point. Now, it's easier to make it look cool if they're all the same distance, the lines each have the same amount of text on them. And we can change those around. We can move one down here. Oops, gotta be on the right place. So what we're going to do is control click on the get ready, and I'm going to do a control T and turn that text like that, hit enter. Then I'm going to control click on ready to dance, and let's move it in here, control T it. Do we get it right where we want? And you can use the little arrow keys on your keyboard to move it in just where you want it and hit enter. Then control click on this one, control click here, control T that is, and now we'll swing this one into place. And arrow keys to bring it up, and try to get the spacing about the same between each one. Hit enter. And now if we zoom in, now if the rear entrance is still fighting a little bit too much, the thing we need to do is control click on the background. That brings up the background layer. We can turn on a paintbrush and make sure black's on top, make the opacity fairly low, and just start painting over that entrance a little bit at a time until it quits fighting us so much for attention. Control 0 to bring up the entire image, and we have a nice looking face or cover for our magazine. Let's just say that we're happy with all of our text now. We're finalizing our magazine. So let's go in and select all the text layers that are on the right side. We don't want these over here. These are kind of separate, but these we want all selected. So let's go up to the text and let's select, click on the first one. Let's go down and click on those. I believe, let me make this smaller, do control 0, and let's see if I can move them all together with the move tool on. Yeah, so I've got them all selected. Let's do a control Z to make sure they're back where they belong. With all of those selected, why don't we just merge all those down into one layer? Now, you don't do this unless you're totally satisfied that you're not going to make any further changes. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck. So we're done. We're ready to finalize our magazine, except we want the text to be maybe a little more visually pleasing than it is right now. So let's go up to layer and down to merge layers, or we can do a control E as we've done many times already, and all of those that are selected will merge together in one layer. So there you go. Now let's do something a little bit different with these to make them stand out. We don't need all this white on black. And I'm just going to put my layers panel back in here and click and move it over here to the other side. So now if I click on the little special effects icon, the FX, just click on blending options. That's where we want to go. And right up here at the top of the layer style blending options is a box called styles. Just click on that. Now, most of you aren't going to have all of these styles, but they are all in your Photoshop. So click on the little gear and you can upload, or actually install, all of these into your styles area. So you just click on these and click append, just like you do other tools, and it will add all of those things for you. Let me move the screen on down here so we can utilize our space. The neat thing is, as we click on these, you can watch the effect that it'll have on the text. So that's probably not the ideal one, right? But look at this. So as we move through there, you can get an idea what kind of effect it's going to have on the text. And that's not bad at all either. There's just lots that we can do, but if you look up here, you see, okay, we've selected this one. Here are all the things that make it what it is. So if you uncheck that, and that, and that, you see what kind of effects those things have. Let's continue on down and experiment with some of the others, just to get a good look at the possibilities. And we've got more on down here. You just don't know what kind of effects some of these are going to have. Now this one obviously has an outer glow on it. So, or in this case, I guess it's the stroke that's doing it. So you can click right on stroke and you can make the stroke a lot less. So here's about a 3. Let's try just about a 1. Not enough. 2. You can kind of see it. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And you see it does have the stroke on it. So all of these are editable. You try them out and you see what it's done, and you can change them to suit your purpose. Again, we've got a huge stroke, and we can, drop that down to like a 2. And see, this is really colorful. Don't know if it's going to work with what we've got going on, but again, you can control how this looks. Turn off the pattern and you get a different look again. Looks like candy, sort of, but you can change the pattern around. Here's the different patterns that are in there, and you see how each one of those are affected. So we can really have a huge effect on our text if we want to, just by going to styles under the FX button. And one of my favorites is Mercury or Chrome. In this case, the text is too small for that to really look that good. This is a ghostly, but maybe not bad in red. It plays off the font at the top, as you can see up here. And again, we've got, we can check the outer glow as having a huge effect on it. If you click on it, you can really drop the opacity of that or the size of it. So let's go back up to styles again, and let's just check a few more while we're here. And it's up to you. You are the digital artist. Which of these suits you is the thing that you have to go by. Notice this plays off the bevel quite a bit, and you can certainly control that and make things more interesting if you wish. They all have a different look about them. And you can add your own color overlay or satin. In this case, you see this is set to screen mode. You can also set it to different blend modes. You can put a gradient over the top of it if you want to. You just click right on the gradient. You see the gradients that there. You can choose a different gradient. So now you see the effect that had. Let me turn that off. So there's lots of things that you can do with the text, experiment, and have some fun with it. You might be surprised at the cool effects that you can come up with on your text and finalize the magazine look. All right, talk to everyone later. I couldn't sign off without at least putting some kind of an effect on there for you to see. But that wraps it up for what I'm going to show. Talk to you all later. Let me know if this was helpful. I appreciate your input.